For a channel which has been largely dedicated to promoting common sense advice, neat tricks, and non-invasive considerations about lifting, a lot of my progress has been needlessly slowed by the fact that for one reason or another, I've fallen victim to common mistakes which keep people in intermediate purgatory. All of these things I've identified as patterns in my own training and life, which have hindered my progress. The first is by far the largest hindrance, and it is properly controlling my diet. Dietary control is one of the lowest possible hanging fruits to sustain good progress in the gym, either actually eating enough to gain weight regularly while bulking, or restraining yourself and being diligent with your cardio during a cut. I failed because I lacked the basic discipline to plan out and stick to planned meals. Instead, letting chance and the whims of other people determine what I eat more often than not. Going forward, a more regimented and nutrition-first diet is going to help me see the results of my training more quickly. The second thing which has held me back the most is probably the most disappointing, and it's a two-parter. The first part is failure to commit to medium and long-term goals, and the second part is failing to program training with life in mind. It has often occurred to me that I have had the bad habit of becoming increasingly disinterested in medium-term goals I set for myself unless things are moving along more nicely than I expected. This compounds with the second part. I also have the tendency of putting together very enjoyable and effective blocks of training for myself, but I fail to consider how real-world obligations will interact with them in the medium term. Having the greatest program in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have the time to execute on all the moving pieces. They say that a plan never survives contact with an enemy, though it's probably useful to make the plan flexible enough to actually accommodate that enemy in the first place. Poor management of recovery, and sleep in particular, is the third main point that's slowed my progress. Being a very active and generally social person, though having many of its benefits, also comes with several drawbacks. For me, that's balancing leisure time, work time, and recovery time. It's my disposition that when I feel I've put in a lot of work, I should reward myself, often with a large block of leisure time. There's nothing wrong with this in itself, but it has at times become an avenue of dysfunction in my recovery from training. It probably isn't worth it to play video games, scroll social media, or watch my favorite shows and movies if it comes at the expense of my sleep schedule. Having a messed up circadian rhythm is bad news no matter who you are. It makes work and studying harder, it sucks hours away from your day, and it inhibits your ability to train properly. It also decreases your ability to see results from that training. Number 4 is taking long breaks from important movements. I find myself often in the pattern of pushing a particular lift as my main focus for the span of 2 to 3 months, and then taking a nearly complete break from that movement for the next 2 to 3 months, or else replacing it with a completely different variation which supposedly fulfills the same role. Though I do believe in the notion that strength is strength and carryover is a real factor in the display of that strength, failure to continually refine and practice technique in key lifts will inhibit the ability of carryover to display that strength, especially at the middle intermediate stage that I find myself at presently. This, I think, is why, though I've visibly gotten bigger, especially in the upper body, I've not gotten much stronger in terms of all-time PRs on exercises like my bench press or even my pull-up. I'm also very guilty of taking large stretches of time where I'm doing little to no squatting or hinging, because the effort of actually training those lifts and movement patterns to progress them is something which can be excessively fatiguing psychologically, to me at least, despite frankly excellent progress I've made with those lifts when I do commit to training them properly. Number 5 is inconsistency in my exercise selection. It's a frequent occurrence that I'll get the feeling of wanting to try some different curl variation on a particular day, or modify my skull crusher technique such that I might feel my triceps work harder. The fact is that though the muscle doesn't necessarily care about the source of a stimulus to grow bigger and stronger, It does matter that that stimulus is consistent enough to actually lock in the adaptations we want to garner from the exercise. So there's a benefit in keeping even the smaller, seemingly inconsequential exercises the same for longer periods of time. That's something I would need to work on. These are really the central pillars of what has kept me smaller and weaker than I otherwise would be. And it's these easy areas of opportunity I hope to exploit such that I can actually drive the maximum benefit from my training. And finally, progress into a late intermediacy in my lifting journey. That's all I've got for now. Enjoy the rest of your day.